We fear discovering that we are more than we think we are, more than our parents, children, teachers think we are. We fear that we actually possess the talent that our still, small voice tells us, that we actually have the guts, the perseverance, the capacity. We fear that we truly can steer our ship, plant our flag, reach our promised land. We fear this because if it's true, then we become estranged from all that we know. We pass through a membrane. We become monsters and monstrous.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
And here we are. Welcome to the Better Humanology podcast. My name is Jerred Moon, and with me, as always, is Talon Schwam. What's up, Talon?
What's up, Jerred? Thanks for the as always.
As always. So here we are, season 2, episode 2. Got a S2.
Little alliteration.
I'm happy to be here, loving the new season, and I think we're gonna have fun today. Today we're talking about becoming better. Again, as always, that's what we're always talking about. Before we hop into today's topic, I want to give a quick Murph update and then hop into the Better Human Bullets, which is now part of Season 2. So first, the Murph update. If you're not following along, you can follow me on Instagram at EO3Fit, or maybe it's at EO3_fit. Either way, you'll find me, search me on Instagram. Many weeks ago, about 20 weeks ago, we did Murph for the podcast, and now I'm doing Murph every single week, once a week, and every 10, I decide to do something a little bit special. The first 10, I did strict Murph, which was, backtrack, Murph, if you're unfamiliar, run a mile, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, run a mile. So at Murph number 10, I did strict Murph, and so I did strict pull-ups, hand release push-ups, and squats with the miles. And then for 20, I wanted to kind of up the ante, and so I did double Murph. So 2 rounds for time, running a mile, 100, 200, 300, a mile. And I just want to give a quick update on that because I know that I've been challenging people out there to do Murph, to take on challenges, to get better, to run faster, and really push yourself here, become more mentally tough. But I do not recommend that anyone do Murph twice in one sitting. It was pretty brutal, very hot, and very uncomfortable. And I got to the fear zone in the sense of like, hey man, you might pass out, or hey, you might get rhabdo. Like a couple like really scary moments in the double Murph because it was just scary. But the one thing I want to say is I've talked about putting workouts up on a pedestal and stuff like that, and doing like the 100-mile bike race, 100-mile single-day bike race, and running a marathon, things that we've done with this podcast, it kind of lowers your like if I were to be like, hey, Talon, do you want to go ride 30 miles on a bike today? In your mind, you'd be like, you know what? I've done way more than that before, so like that would be easy. Right. And so that's how I will say that's the only real benefit out of doing the double Murph is like I'm doing Murph here in a few days, and I'm not concerned about it whatsoever. And before I would get like a little bit, oh man, here comes Murph, but now it's like, hey, you did 2 last week, so this is going to be pretty easy. And I just want to give people an update. Keep going out there, challenging yourself, pushing yourself, do a Murph if you're going to do a Murph, but ultimately I'm going to go ahead and say I don't recommend the double Murph. I do not think that actually makes you better. It may just break you down a little more than you're comfortable with.
It really reminds me of like when I was training to run, like they tell you, well, train to be able to run twice whatever your race is or whatever your competition is or whatever it is. So that way you feel totally confident whenever you're running that particular race. But I think it's crazy to do it with a Murph, with how intense that workout is.
So if you're training for Murph, just go ahead and do it twice and it'll make it a little bit easier. Well, Dave Castro, he's the director of CrossFit Games. He just announced, I don't know, like a week ago or something, that one of the workouts at the CrossFit Games this year is going to be Murph again. And so I'm excited to see...
to compete yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and challenge some of those athletes. No.
Right after they finish, you should be like, all right, do a second one with me now?
You guys ready? Let's go again. No, so that's the Murph update. You know, I might throw these in here every once in a while instead of doing a full episode or something on Murph. But, man, I got a lot more to go. And
you're killing it, man. You're doing awesome. You are motivating all the rest of us out there.
You know, my tone dropped a little bit there, but I am actually loving Murph. I do enjoy it. I look forward to it every single Saturday. All right, so Better Human Bullets. Let's just get right to it. Actually, do you want to start, Talon? Do you want to start with Talon's challenge?
Yeah, we can start with Talon's challenge. How did your challenges go last week?
Good, man. I got my daily push-up grids in. I made mine relatively small. I had one big one, and the rest of them were small, so I want to get it done, but it was good. And then the 20 minutes of doing something that you just hate, I took on small chores for that kind of stuff because, like I said, I'm pushing myself in different ways, and so that's how I do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who'd you call for your strengths and weaknesses?
I'm sorry I didn't do your challenge.
No talent challenges last week.
Well, yeah, I'm very, very sorry about that, but I have you to make sure I know what my strengths and weaknesses are on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I did my push-up grids, and I think for me doing tough stuff was probably trying to talk you into doing the main topic for this podcast. I think I went a little over 20 minutes with that one.
Yeah, we're gonna.
That
was definitely a mental toughness challenge.
Right, but I won't get into my strengths and weaknesses that I found from asking the wifey, but I mean they were pretty similar to what I thought. But for Talent's challenge this week, it's going to be a tough one. It's just going to be something that's going to be difficult for a lot of people because you're going to have to really think about yourself in an extremely positive light. And it's going to tie into some of the other things we're going to talk about later in the show. But I want you guys to try to do is write yourself a love letter. And I'm not saying like an essay. It doesn't need to be 10 pages long. If you could just put, 5-6 sentences down, then you've got the total concept already accomplished. But it's just going to help you see yourself in a different light again. And then, hopefully like yourself a little bit better by the time you finish. What do you got for Better Human Bullets this week, Jerred?
Dude, I'm not going to lie. Before we move on, that is a challenge and a half. I'm not a big self-lover, and so I actually will take that one on this weekend.
You should, though. What a badass you are, my man.
And see, well, yeah, right. and so see what I come up with trying to write myself a love letter. It makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it, which is normally a good thing if you want to become better. If you're feeling a little discomfort, then you're probably headed in the right direction. All right, so my challenge is the Better Human Bullets to continue. My fitness challenge this week for everybody and my mental toughness challenge are one and the same. And if anyone's been hanging around Into 3 Fitness for any amount of time, you've seen this come up, but I want to bring it up here, and that is the Iron Mile. And so I'm challenging everyone to do the Iron Mile this week. Pretty simple. You're going to load a barbell or a yoke, and it cannot be a sandbag. It cannot be anything that would be somewhat comfortable on your back. It needs to be something very uncomfortable like a barbell. Load it to really whatever you want. It could be your body weight. It could be much less than that. Doesn't really matter. Whatever you think you can handle. And you're going to walk a mile with that thing on your back. And it's called the Iron Mile. And the reason it's a fitness challenge and a mental toughness challenge. Fitness challenge because how much it works with stabilization of different muscles. Just loaded carries are huge in general. And that's the fitness side of things. The mental toughness side of things, you'll figure that out about probably the 400 to 800 meter mark. You'll be screaming and, as I say when I normally prescribe this workout, you'll hate me, you'll hate the workout, you'll hate the barbell, you'll hate everything, you'll think it's stupid, you won't understand why you're doing it, and then right when you start thinking all those thoughts, you've just realized why I suggested the workout to you, because you need to push through where you just got and get better. So that is my fitness/mental toughness challenge for the week. And next, the book this week. So I'm continuing blazing through books at double speed, 2 times speed.
How did you get this week?
Just one this week.
Just one this week. Down week for you.
Yeah, I'm slowing down a little bit. I go through cycles. So the book this week is that I recommend for everyone is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Great book, and I'm going to read a quote from it. Are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear is good. Like self-doubt, fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do. Remember one rule of thumb. The more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. So if that quote resonates with you in any way, shape, or form, you may like the book The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He kind of writes it from a writer's perspective, because he is obviously a writer, and he's kind of communicating with the writers, just getting their work done and writing, being creative and everything else. But I really feel that it goes way beyond that. If you're trying to achieve anything, there's this whole big thing he talks about in the book called resistance, and we're going to talk about it later in this podcast. And so I won't hop into it a lot here, but a really great book that I recommend everyone check out. It's actually a really quick read. It's a small, thin book and something you can knock out pretty fast. And if you're doing Audible, you can knock it out 2 times speed. And just just a reminder there, if you go to audibletrial.com/betterhuman, you can actually get 30 days of Audible for free, and or 30 days free Audible and 1 free book. So 30-day free trial and 1 free book. So you could actually go get this book for free 100% at audibletrial.com/betterhuman.
And so today we have kind of it's an interesting topic I alluded to earlier that it took a little while to get Jerred on the train even to just bring this up onto the show. A lot of talking to. It's the latest kind of, I don't know, phenomenon that's sweeping the world.
Fad.
Because, the internet age has really made a lot of people lazy, softer, slower, fatter, all kinds of things, right? So the latest geocaching app is Pokémon Go, right? So most everybody has heard of this. What was crazy to me is when I brought this up to Jerred, he had not even heard of the app itself. But so basically,
I live under a rock. I do.
So, yeah, I mean, a little bit. If you never heard of it before, I would agree.
Yeah.
But it's only been out a week, so you're not too far behind the curve.
Oh, okay, good. That makes me feel a little bit better.
But it's based around this concept of geocaching, which is basically like hide and go seek meets like scavenger hunt, but like with people using GPS devices and hiding small little trinkets or like notes or letters and things like that, so they can go and like socialize and get out and travel. So I did a little digging, and there was actually a big research study that was just done 2 years ago by Texas A&M researchers, and they found that like they tested like 1,000 people, and they found that it
this is geocaching.
Geocaching, yes.
Geocaching research. Okay.
Yeah, promotes, like they say, it promotes physical activity, social activity, and all kinds of things. But what it came down to is they found the people that geocache at least once a week were more physically fit. They reported better mental health, and then those people were 40% more likely to hit their recommended, physical activity limit, which probably isn't a lot of people that listen to this show, because we're people that are already trying to get better. We're doing way above our recommended physical activity levels, right?
Right.
But they did say this one isn't really that exciting about the geocaching research that was found, but that geocachers walk probably an additional 10 miles per month than normal non-geocachers. So that's not huge, but Pokemon came around last week and changed the whole ball game.
It
So
did.
what
It
they basically do-
changed something, that's for sure.
Jared's hating already. So I know it's silly because it's little cartoon animals, but what they came around to try to do is it's basically like the Rolls Royce of geocaching fads. It's like they took Google and Google Maps and just like transplanted a whole like virtual world over what we have with our regular real world, and they put like all kinds of like points of interest and collection zones and meetup locations and stuff like that. And so maybe it's popular because it's Pokemon, but the whole craze about geocaching is kind of making it so that adults are getting into it as well. So I know, yeah, it's not the biggest thing, but people are talking about some of the benefits that are coming out of it already in a week, and it kind of blew my mind when I first started reading this stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah, I'm obviously not a huge fan of the Pokemon podcast, and talking about how that can make you better. And I have some issues with it. I mean, it's only been out a week, like you just said, and so
right.
it's kind of like, how much can we really talk about it? But I'm interested to hear what you feel the benefits are. of Pokemon.
Well, this isn't just me. This is some folks out there that
Science, right?
we got one psychologist comment on this stuff a little bit later on, but so the first one it does is kind of obvious. It gets you like walking around, running around outside, which, I mean, it probably for us, if we're already going out there and we're doing a lot of work and working out outside, then, it doesn't mean a whole lot to us. But like I was talking about, with the information age that we're in right now, a lot of people aren't already doing that. So it kind of speaks for itself that if you have to go out and go all these different places and meet up with people, then you're going to be walking around or running around to get twice as many, steps in or whatever to level up your little Pokemans. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just say the fundamental disagreement with just the idea in general. I'll admit that like some of the things that you're talking about can be good for people.
Okay.
But where I have a problem with it is just the fact that it's sad to me where society has dropped.
Yeah.
How far, because you're right, you're talking about the people who listen to the Better Humanology podcast are probably better than average, my opinion.
Hope so.
And so, to say to like pick up Pokemon game.
Well, I didn't say pick it up.
Well, I'm just saying, if that is like, that's what's getting you motivated to move and get out of the house, I just feel like you have much bigger problems. And I'm not passing judgment, but maybe you need to try a little bit harder. If
probably
if getting an extra 800 meters in with Pokemon Go today was your workout, just drop the Pokemon Go altogether, and let's just get a solid mile in. That's how I view it in general. So that's the fundamental disagreement is, like if I were to pick it up right now, no, right. I couldn't. No, it's a waste of time. I couldn't do it. All right.
So the next thing for me kind of falls into like, what if you're someone that goes to the gym to do your running or your elliptical or whatever you do? You're not getting outside to do that exercise. You're sitting there on the treadmill and you're pounding out your miles or whatever. And you're not getting that sunlight and that little bit of tree therapy that, I always harp on, offline. Mm-hmm. But, both those things, help increase energy levels, being outside, reduce stress levels, get you out in nature. And that's just something that us better humans like to do. Go out and challenge ourselves, being outside.
Yeah, maybe it's because I feel like I can't relate to some of these things, and I need to be more like aware of what other people how other people may live their lives. But I worked out. I went up to a buddy's wedding in Colorado, not long ago, and I actually did Murph in Colorado inside. So I did a mile on the treadmill, and then hit up calisthenics inside, and then ran a mile on a treadmill. And I realized when I was doing that workout, it was the first time I'd worked out indoors in years, years and years. I'm outside every single workout, winter, summer, spring, fall, it doesn't matter. And so, yeah, getting outside is a good thing. Every workout for me is outside, but if you're not outside already, that's an important thing.
Yeah. And so it goes on that they have a few more things that they talk about. There are some positives, and these are probably a little more touchy-feely and not so fitness-oriented. But it says it forces you to meet other people because you go to these areas and somehow I guess you trade or you battle your Pokemans or whatever. And, there's hundreds of stories already on the internet about people like, oh, my gosh, I made new friends. Like, I'm somebody that can't go out. I'm somebody that's, I've got issues, anxiety or whatever. And so it's helped me in my social situations. I thought that maybe you're not a better person by having more friends, but maybe you feel like you're a little bit better on the inside. I don't know.
I don't know either. Does that make you better?
Well, if you feel better.
If you feel better. I guess better is subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, it's relative. It's up for interpretation. The other thing, the one that I like the most is that they talk about how it forces you to go out and see some more of the world that you wouldn't usually see. A lot of these locations, like meetups or whatever the places, are set up at kind of monuments and statues that have historical like relevance, so that you can go there and maybe you pick up a little bit of history otherwise you might not have. But this is the one that comes near and dear to my heart, the next one, because I like harp on the psychology stuff, and I got love for the people that have mental issues and mental disorders. And so I want to drop a couple stats real quick on you a little bit. So 1 in 10 Americans experience depression every year, and that number continues to rise by 20% every year.
Did you say 1 in 10?
1 in 10. 32 million with depression in the United States this last year. That's 121 million worldwide.
It's actually lower than I thought it would be.
And the number one cause of depression is obesity. So all these things kind of interconnected. And then anxiety affects 40 million Americans per year. So those two combined make up, what is that? 72 million Americans every year who are dealing with issues that prevent them either from getting the motivation on their own to go outside and exercise or to just function on a daily basis. And so a lot of people that have those issues already in this last week that have tried this app have come out and talked about it. So there's a psychologist named John Grohol that's reported that there isn't enough time for solid data in a week, of course, but he says that it seems to be the best app that's ever been developed for bettering people's moods and mental health, even though several have been built to do just that and have failed. So he's pretty surprised by what's going on. And the last one I talked about, it's kind of a personal one. Just my siblings, I don't live nearby them, but all of them are like, they have a close relationship and they're, doing well, but their relationship has, I think, grown immensely in this last week, just spending time with each other because of this app. So I know it sounds silly, but it's probably not the best thing you could be doing. You could probably be doing a lot of other stuff with your family. You could probably be like going out and playing sports if you're going to try and get exercise. That works on a lot more than just walking around and swiping on your phone. You'll be working on teamwork and coordination and other things. So for me, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but it is one of those fads that a lot of people are using to say, hey, it's making me better. So I thought it was important to at least acknowledge on the show a little bit.
Well, I just have to throw out my fitness disclaimer to why I also like everything's going to be much harder than people want it to be. And if you're obese, like severely obese, maybe walking works for a little bit, but walking is not going to get you where you want. You're going to have to try harder. If you are not obese, but you want to look a certain way, running is not the answer. You're going to have to do a lot more. You're going to have to try a lot harder. You're going to have to push yourself really hard. And if you're a performance athlete and you want to lift more, run faster, jump further, any of that stuff, you're going to have to try really freaking hard. And so that's my only... I agree. Those are the people I'm talking to.
Yeah, and I know Pokemon Go isn't somewhere you should say, hey, this is going to be my exercise for the day or anything like that. This is going to be what, gets me my calories burnt or gets me that, beach body that I really want. But I know we'll talk about here in a little bit, but I think, every step in the right direction, is a decision to try and get better and is, a step towards getting better, no matter how small of a shuffle it is or how big of a leap. So
if people really wanted to get better, beyond Pokemon Go, what should we be doing, Talon?
So I know we put together a couple Better Human basics to follow up because Pokemon Go is not enough, like we just discussed. It's not going to be enough to get you what you want. But so we came up with a couple of what we believe are the mentalities you should have, the kind of big picture outlook that you guys should take to do rather than walking around catching little monsters. And so for me, I just kind of mentioned it, and I think it doesn't fall too far from the Pokemon tree because it's I think it still could be seen as a positive if you're just really on the other end of the spectrum and you're not doing a lot of these things that we talk about in the show. But I feel like small steps can lead to big steps. And if you don't quit, you just take 1 foot at a time, that you'll eventually reach the finish line. I think I talked with Jerred about this a couple of days ago or so, but I feel like finding success and becoming better becomes addictive over time. And I think if that starts with small things, then over time it'll gradually lead to bigger things. And you'll want to find more and more successes and you'll want to get better and better. So that's my first one.
So boom, Better Human Basic number 1. All right, I'll take number 2. This is a quote that a lot of people like. Quote. It's it's a Bible verse. It's Proverbs 27:17. But a lot of people mention it, throw it out there. They have no biblical reference whatsoever when they do. And it's, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And it is kind of a cool quote when you think about it. If you're thinking about your friends pushing you, you know, people think like, oh yeah, if you're, you know, you're working out next to each other, iron sharpens iron, it's badass. But what people don't really think about what that quote, or, you know, that verse, whatever actually means, is how ridiculously brutal it is for iron to sharpen iron. There's heat, there's friction, there's resistance, there's everything that, yes, I think another human being is going to make you better if you have that human being in your life. So this is one of the basics I think that makes you better, having someone there who's going to push you to be better. But it's not all unicorns, leprechauns, and rainbows. Like,
right.
That friction has to be there. Iron sharpening iron is not a pretty process. It's a grinding process, and it's the grinding and the friction between the two human beings that actually makes you better. It's not this cookie cutter like pretty process. And so that's my better human basic. Number 2, we're gonna go with iron sharpens iron, but just know what that actually means.
Just so much like being you, my man. So the next one I have is, and it sounds basic, but I honestly really believe in this. Something I've been taught a lot since being a young kid and playing sports and things like that, is that can-do attitude. And we talked about this kind of in a show last season about, you know, removing can't kind of from your vocabulary. But it's really just the belief in yourself and the ability that you will persevere and succeed, and shutting out all the haters and shutting out the noise, and just finding that, you know, as long as I stick to it, I can accomplish what I want to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree with that one 100%, man. So that's number 3.
Number Trace.
Number 4, I'm going to go with, maybe it's similar, and a lot of these could, you know, overlap, but this is a simple one, and this is what I don't want to say preaching to my kids, but it's never stop trying, or try really hard. And I know that sounds simple, but when my son asks me how to do something or how I did something or anything, my response is typically, you know, I tried really hard, you know, or, you know how you did that? You tried really hard. Like, I want him to know that effort is what spawns results. It's nothing that he was born with. It's nothing that he just has. He's going to always have to put in that effort to achieve great things. So that's what I'm teaching my kids right now. That's what I honestly believe for your career, for your fitness, for your life, is that if you never stop trying, you're always going to continue to see success. And so, yeah, that's number 4 for me, man. Never stop trying.
I love that. You can't just lean on your skills and your abilities. You have to really push yourself to do and accomplish more. Yeah,
it's great if you have some like God-given talent or whatever,
sure.
But whether you do or you don't, you need to try really hard. Like,
right.
you know, that's true. And I think that
like professional athletes probably have tons of skill and ability already, but they have to put in so much more effort and work to get there.
And that's when you get like the Michael Jordan, right? It's like when you have someone who has this unrelenting work ethic with a ton of, you know, talent. You're like, oh shit, that person's the best in the world, better than LeBron James. I mean,
Michael Jordan, or, you know, I mean, if you want to accomplish 2 more back-to-back, Jerred Moon, I mean,
right,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the next one I have is very touchy-feely, but this probably should have been number 1 for me in importance. It's a common love and compassion for yourself as well as your fellow human. And so this fits in with my challenge for the week. But I know it's not going to make you better physically necessarily. I think it could lead to that, but it'll make you feel more positive about life, your direction you're going. It'll make you feel better about others' motives, less stressed out. And I think it's difficult for me to see how I can be a better human without looking at how I can be a better person as well. So for me, it's all interconnected, and, you know, how I look at others really helps me feel like I have that much more motivation, that much more drive, that much more compassion about humanity, and to do better.
You know, something I'm really starting to believe, and I've heard this from a few friends, and just a few friends recently, and it's, the better person you are, the better you are, the more you focus on yourself becoming better, the better everything in your life is going to be. Like, you're just going to be an amplified version of yourself everywhere if you better yourself. And I had trouble, like, I'm obviously all about becoming better, but I had trouble believing that because it seems a bit selfish at times to only focus on yourself and making yourself better. But it's really true. If you're making yourself better, every part of your life is going to be better. And I don't know, I just really believe that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
I think it really drives us for how we even started the show, too. We really want to help others become better, and that's something we talk about often, and it's that kind of mentality, not just to improve yourself, but improve others around you so that everybody, raises the bar a little bit and gets better altogether.
And that brings me to my last one that I have, and that is kind of a litmus test. Just for your day-to-day life, it's really easy to do. This question is rolling around in my head each and every single day and helps me make decisions pretty easily. And are you ready? It's groundbreaking. The question is this making me better?
Oh, yes.
And that's my question I ask to myself anytime I'm doing something questionable. And here's the deal with this. I want to make 2 points on this question. One, if you have to go into like some extreme justification or over rationalization that there's some twisted way this is making you better, it's not making you better. If you're like, if you have to go down that path to where you're like, no, I'm going to sit down and watch TV for 4 hours right now because, you know what, I had a long day, I need to relax, or relax to me is better, and like all this, like you go too far down that path. Yes, maybe you need that, but maybe it's not 4 hours. Maybe it's 40 minutes. Maybe you need a 40-minute break for yourself before you go back and do something. And so just answer that question honestly with yourself, with time frames and really being very realistic. And then the other thing I wanted to focus just that question on is do not focus too much on your weaknesses. And the reason I say that is because I feel like, at least in the fitness world, there's this overemphasis on crushing your weaknesses. And I agree with it to a point. But I think that if you overdo it, you're always trying to crush a weakness, and you're not really developing what you have. You're just going to be discouraged and feel like you're not making a lot of progress. So yeah, work on your weaknesses, but don't. And the only reason I throw that caveat in there is because if you are doing something that you suck at, then the answer to that question, is this making me better, will be yes, but you don't always need to be doing something that you suck at. And so I just want to throw those 2 caveats in there too. The question you should ask yourself at least 10 times a day, is this making me better?
I agree. I think I probably should ask myself that more often. And I'm totally on board with you shouldn't focus on your weaknesses so much because, I mean, it's great. You're right. Every time you focus on weakness, you're going to be able to say, I'm probably getting better. But you're also probably going to be discouraged a lot more often than you're, inspired, because if you're doing things you suck at all the time, you're going to just see yourself sucking all the time.
Right.
You're going to
be like, and we've talked about this, like, it's just kind of your emotional energy. After you finish a task, are you like emotionally charged or are you emotionally drained?
Right.
If you're emotionally drained, that's probably a good indicator that you suck at that, and you probably shouldn't be doing it. And if you're emotionally charged, you need to be doing more of those things.
Right.
And I'm a big believer of that.
I love that. Well, moving on to the very last one we have. I snuck in on Jerred and threw one more in there because this is something I just absolutely live by. And it's live in the present. And for me, a quote that me and my family throw around all the time is be where your feet are. And I feel like just because you're on the grind, I mean, all of us trying to get better. Me and Jerred are trying every week to get as best as we can all the time. And so it sometimes can feel like a grind. And I know, especially like last week, Jerred, when he was reading 4 books, I mean, I couldn't hardly imagine being on that kind of grind where he's working probably 2 jobs at the same time and then reading books in the downtime. But like he said, 4 hours isn't what you need to stop and smell the flowers. If you're gonna stop and take a break, realize where you're at, appreciate what you're doing that day and where you are that day. It doesn't take that much time. You can do it in 40 minutes or whatever. Just it's important though to remember where you are and like appreciate the journey as much as the end goal, because all of us want to be better, and sometimes that can be a little bit of a vague end goal. But if we focus on how we're doing, each day as well, that can give us inspiration, motivation to continue working harder, and sometimes energy to go ahead and work that much faster, harder, better, stronger after we've taken that little rest and realize where we are.
Dude, I love that one. I really do. And I think I'm going to challenge the listeners a little bit further. If you catch yourself this week on your phone, your iPad, your computer, or whatever, and your kids or your wife are asking you if your kids are asking you to play, if your wife's asking you to talk or whatever,
or husband.
Yeah, or husband, sorry, I put it in my frame of reference. And then if you're like, your response is, I said, give me a minute. You're probably not very present. And I say that because we've probably all been there at some point in time. And that's always an indicator. If I'm looking at my phone and my son's like, hey, Daddy, can we play? And I'm like, just give me a second. If those words ever come out of my mouth, I know right then and there I need to put my phone down. It's almost like a tripwire for me. I'm like, okay, you're not present right now. He's asking you to play. You want to be on your phone for another minute. I immediately close the phone and throw it down. So just a challenge, something that works for me. Like if I ever realize I'm not present, it's normally due to some form of media, which is overwhelming in today's world, and that's how I shut it down.
I think that's a great challenge, because life doesn't happen in the future. It doesn't happen in the past. It doesn't happen in our heads. It happens right here, the now.
I agree, man. So we've talked about a lot of good stuff, covering the better human basics. We covered Pokemon Go. But something, the quote that you did at the very beginning of the podcast, I love that quote or passage, if you want to call it. And the book that I recommended today was The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. And I said earlier that we're going to talk more about, not necessarily the book, but the main idea in that book is resistance. And just to sum up resistance, and this is another quote from the book. So the rule of thumb, the more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the resistance we feel toward pursuing it.
Dang, that's deep, Jerred.
So I'm just saying the more resistance you feel, and each and every single one of us feel resistance on a daily basis. And to be honest, I might get maybe a little too philosophical here, but this is something that escapes my mind, is why anything that we think that we should do, anything that we're supposed to do, or anything that we know that will make us better, why is that hard for us to do? We could very easily be in a world that's not true, but we're not in that world. We're in a world where if you want to achieve something, if you want to do something that other people aren't doing, you want to get fitter, you want to get faster, you want to get, grow a business, you want to get smarter, anything that you want to do, it's hard. There's this friction, there's this resistance that acts against you. It's almost like this invisible force in the universe that no one really knows what the hell it is or what to call it other than resistance or friction, but it screws with all of us. And so I want to talk about that a little bit today, because maybe you've never been introduced to this idea, but the more you think about it, the more you'll realize it's true. And that's what happened to me. Is I was like, what are you talking about, Steven Pressfield, the guy who wrote this book? I was like, there's no invisible force resisting me when I'm trying to achieve. I can just achieve. That's not true. Anytime I'm trying to do something, there's all of these procrastination things that sound way better than what I'm doing, and it's so hard to get the work done. Something I could probably honestly do in a day takes me 5 days, so resistance is a real thing. And so, Talon, what are your thoughts on resistance?
Man, this took me in so many different directions hearing this. My plans for the show, this wasn't the direction. I wasn't thinking quite so philosophical, but I am just ecstatic this is where we're going with it. So for me, a lot of things come to mind. The first thing is, it's easy not to achieve anything. It's easy not to do anything, to accomplish anything, to go anywhere, to get better. It's really easy to sit there on your ass, listen to our podcast, and be like, dang, those guys are really funny or really smart. I'm going to go turn it off and put the football game on or the cartoon on or the basketball game or whatever, and just sit there and munch on your Cheetos. That's the easiest thing you can do. But if it was easy to accomplish things, everybody would already be accomplished. Everybody would already be the most successful person that you could possibly think of. So I mean, it's difficult because nobody can get to that. Nobody can really get their head around it. I think this leads to a lot of things we just talked about in our Better Human basics we just talked about, like where you said, even in my challenge, that writing that love letter to yourself is going to be difficult. Kind of thinking about yourself in this really positive light, falling in love with yourself, believing in yourself is something that's hard for people to do naturally. And so finding that motivation, that inspiration just inside yourself is something that's difficult. I feel like being in the moment, like we just talked about, it's really easy, especially with today. Like I've said it probably 2 or 3 times now on this show. We're in the information age, and things are just wild. The amount of things that pull our attention away are immense nowadays compared to people in the past. And so we have all these things that kind of get in the way of us, holding us back. That's not even really even touching what you're really talking about. That still kind of just builds on top of it, where it's just like, we have so much resistance already just here in the everyday world without even looking within ourselves necessarily to see, what kind of fears we have or whatnot.
I think, and honestly, what bothers me the most is not being able to. I don't know why it is. That's the, and if you ask that question enough, you're going to get led a lot of different directions. But I was on the On It podcast with Aubrey Marcus, and so he's the founder of On It. If you guys have heard of that company, pretty big supplement company, and they do fitness equipment and stuff too. But I was on his podcast, and I actually asked that question to him because I know he's a real philosophical dude. And so,
what did he say?
I was basically like, I don't know why we can't all just do the things that we're supposed to do all the time. And that sounds so ridiculous to people. When you say that, they're like, well, duh, we can't just... And I'm like, no, but why? Like, why can't we all just do what we're supposed to do all the time? Like, actually answer that question for me. And everyone has a very hard time answering that because there's really no answer unless you want to go there's this thing called resistance, or there's this thing called friction, or whatever. And he brought up, he's not religious, but I would say maybe spiritual. He brought up duality, and he's like, the more that you bring in the world is you're going to be met with that opposing force. And so the harder you go, like the more you try, the harder that you push yourself in this world, that's how much force. It's is it Newton, like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Right. He's basically saying that's true in the universe. And so, like, the more we try, the harder we go, the faster, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We're going to be met with that same force. And so now we're talking more on a physics level, which, to be honest, my mind's a little more analytical than it is philosophical. And so that makes a little bit more sense to me. It's like, okay, so if there were a speed, I'm trying 10x to get better, 10x is going to be hitting me back. Just because that's how the universal works, almost as if it's the law of gravity. So you're telling me this is a unseen, or at least we haven't tapped into it. There's this force, an actual force against you when you're trying to achieve something. The harder you try, the harder it's going to oppose you.
It's like an effort karma or something like that.
An effort karma, yeah.
What goes around comes around. Wow, for me, I really think about, like, when I think of resistance, I jump to, like, Bruce Lee, and like a lot of my philosophical quotes, it could be silly to some people, but I think of, like, buddy of mine always talks about be like water, and like, there's always going to be resistance. There's always going to be, work is usually not going to be fun for most people unless you somehow find your passion, like we talked about last week, which is not going to be the majority of people. And so you just have to find a way, to just go with the flow. You find a way to still get what you need done and to deal with it, to shut out the haters, to shut out some of the resistance if you can. But that's a really interesting concept, that duality. I haven't thought about it like that. Like, the more you put in, you better watch it because it's coming back around to kick you in the ass.
Right. And that's what, like, I don't think that it should make anyone fearful, but it's almost... it's true. I know the bigger the project I take on, the more force I feel that's against me to achieve it. And I don't know if it makes me sound stupid to honestly not know why we can't just, like, do what we're supposed to be doing at all times to achieve, but there's not really an answer to that question. And, that's probably the best one I've gotten so far.
What do you think about internal things like fear of failure, fear of success, or fear of freedom. Like I think I brought up to you, a couple weeks ago about myself.
I think that, and that's actually in the book, The War of Art. He talks about fear like constantly, and I'm a huge believer in that. And I think that typically, as long as you cross-check it with your logic,
Sure.
The more fearful you are heading into something, that's probably a good indicator that you, like I said towards the beginning of the show when you gave your challenge about writing the love letter, I was like, man, that makes me really uncomfortable. That probably means I should do it, and that's true. That's how I feel about a lot of things, and that discomfort really maybe it just comes down to fear. Maybe I'm fearful to say a lot of good things about myself or whatever, and there are a lot of other great books I could talk about kind of on a similar topics, but I'm only recommending one book a week. You guys go knock out The War of Art, but yeah, I think a lot of it centers around fear. It could be fear that you actually are successful and you don't know what to do with that, or maybe fear that you go out on your own and you try to achieve something and you fail. Maybe it's fear of failure. Believe it or not, there is a fear of success. A lot of people have that and they don't even realize it. They don't fully believe in themselves. There's a lot of fear that could be holding people back.
I think what I really was kind of getting to, I didn't really explain it very well, but for me, it's almost like I talked about like a fear of freedom, but it's more like having freedom from expectation finally. And maybe people live under resistance is one of those, or expectation is one of those resistances that people often deal with, where it's like maybe that's pressure. That's maybe not the best pressure. Like we talked about pressure before on the show too. I don't know.
I think what you're saying, fear
can be
fear of freedom from expectation. Like people like expectations.
Yeah.
And that can be, I think this is a very unfortunate thing. If you don't find the right people in this world, that can determine your entire life. And it's kind of scary. But if you're hanging around a bunch of guys or girls who don't push themselves. Yeah, there we go, right? That was good.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. If you're hanging around a lot of people who just aren't really pushing you to be better, and that's like your group, those are your people, I'm sorry. Like, good thing you're listening to this podcast, maybe, because we're going to push you to be better. And that, we're going to raise the bar here in season 2. But, really that's what's unfortunate is expectations in general might not be very high based off the people that you're around. And so maybe you're comfortable with those. So maybe if you were to put some set of new expectations on there, you'd be either fearful or maybe having no expectations whatsoever would scare you to death because you don't know what your expectations should be.
It's true. It's an interesting point. For me, I think it comes down, just with this one topic, if it is fear and internal stuff, my answer personally is becoming aware of it. And I think I say these kinds of things often, but for me, it's either, thinking about it on your own or like I do and talk about it with wifey or with you and Jerred and sit down and be like, okay, work out some of these things. Like, is it this? Is it fear? Is it, anxiety? Whatever is it, fear of success or failure or whatever. And I think, sometimes, probably not all the time, but sometimes just becoming aware of yourself a little bit more. And I know that's been my last 2 challenges, and that's something that I harp on all the time. But just becoming aware of what you're feeling and some of the subconscious things that's going on inside of you might help you overcome that fear a little bit better. Of course, there's not a end-all, be-all to accomplishing everything you want all the time. But some of these resistances that are internal, I think, you could probably help alleviate on your own with the power of your mind.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very high level, strategic and or philosophical discussion on resistance. And maybe in another podcast, we could hop into maybe a more tactical level of things you could do to achieve your goals to combat resistance on a daily basis. Because I feel like that's what I'm doing every day. It is like, if I don't have some sort of system or discipline to follow, resistance would win, And so you have to put the systems in place. You have to have the discipline, but man, it's a crazy concept in general, just resistance as a whole.
If you don't have the time, thank goodness you're listening to us right now because we can do some of this thinking for you and you don't have to worry about bouncing off other people. Maybe you are fearing success or failure or whatever it is out there, but, put a little thought to it and, you'll get there.
All right, guys. So let's go ahead and call this season 2, episode 2 done. I will say, if you are enjoying the podcast, enjoying this new season, please head over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review and a positive comment. And then just to recap some of the things, the challenges you have this week. From me, it's your fitness and mental toughness challenge in 1. I'm going to have you do the Iron Mile. So put a steel bar on your back and walk a mile. The weight doesn't really matter. I suggest if you're feeling really hardcore, do your body weight, if not something less than that. And then the book, we've mentioned it more than a few times, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. If you enjoyed any of the conversation we had this evening or any of the ideas, go ahead and pick up that book. You can get it on Audible for free. If you're not already an Audible member, just go to audibletrial.com/betterhuman. And then Talon, of course, he has his Talon's challenge for the week, which is
Write a love letter to yourself and then give a big old huggy poo to yourself.
I can't wait to give that one a try. All right, guys, thanks for listening. That is episode 2 of season 2.
Thanks, guys.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.